Welcome back to Real Girl Talk Podcast Radio. Each one of these episodes provides our listeners an opportunity to help recognize, develop, and achieve all that God has for you. My mission is to give you what you need to thrive without limitations and fulfill your God-given assignment with faith-filled messages, interviewing fascinating guests, and sharing ideas for lifestyle abundance, growing your faith, leveling up in business, and always committed to keeping it real. Now let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of Real Girl Talk Podcast Radio. My guest today is Lindsey Graham. She is the one and only Patriot Barbie. She is a proud pro-gun, pro-life, Jesus-loving, red-blooded conservative American woman. She has a fierce voice for conservative women and a spitfire advocate for small business owners, an authentic patriot standing for American values. Her story sounds like something out of the wild conspiracy theory novel, and you wouldn't believe it would happen in America, but yet it did. And she's here to tell her story. Hello, Lindsey. How are you?
I'm amazing. How are you, my dear?
The one and only Patriot Barbie. And we'll talk about where you got the name, because if I'm right, someone named you that was trying to cut you down, and you said, well, thank you for that name. I think I'll use it and I'll go with it. So I want you to kind of introduce yourself to everyone. If someone has not seen you somewhere on the news or dressed in a cat suit in front of the school board or anything like that, exactly, they're living under a rock or they're watching CNN and they're not paying attention. So I want you to really kind of tell everybody. But I will say I have a small percentage of men that will tap in and listen, depending on who the guest is. So just know that the women are supporting you. We love you. We want to give you inspiration and power and love right off the bat. But I want you to tell everyone how this all started. I know you owned a salon and you just said, you know what, this is bull. We're not going to shut down. This is unconstitutional. And you just kind of take it from there. Tell us what happened.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I was, at least for a while, notoriously known as the salon owner in Oregon who stood up to mandates. So we did lock down with everybody else in 2020. I remember the date. It was March 23rd that they shut all of America down. And my husband and I owned 6 businesses in Oregon. They were all non-essential. So immediately we had 3 kids. I just had a baby, 6 businesses, 6 overheads, 6 expenses, like brand new house, brand new car. The lockdowns were like devastating to our family. I mean, devastating. I look at people in lesser situations, like single moms, right, whose kids were stuck at home, and yet she had to go to work. Like, what do you do there, right? That's devastating. My situation was not as devastating as some people's, except for financially, where we realized we were going in hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt because all 6 businesses were closed. And so it was about week 6. And this is so hard to imagine that we complied for 6 weeks, because remember, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve and then 2 weeks. But at 6 weeks, everyone was still compliant. Everyone was still scared to open up and like defy lockdowns. And I was not political. I was not a really, really devout, like in tune with Jesus Christian at that time. And it was just kind of my hard-headed spirit that was like, we are literally going to go bankrupt if we stay shut down. I'm not going to go bankrupt. I didn't choose this. And I don't believe it. Because if Walmart is open, I think I can do hair. I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
And so I reopened my salon. What I truly thought at the time was that other people would join with me, that I would say I was opening and they would go, you know what, me too. But it didn't happen. It was just me. And so I was like probably the third in America, right after Shelley Luther in Texas and before Ian Smith in New Jersey. And so I got the wrath of the government. I got threatened with fines, jail time, misdemeanor, $50,000 a day fines. And the story went global because Child Protective Services ended up at my door 3 days after I opened. And they inspected my home, said that my home was being reported as unsafe, and threatened, they gave me paperwork and threatened to take my kids away. Wow. And so understanding the overreach of the government at that moment in my life, where I was not paying attention prior, was just the most awakening moment. Like, everyone woke up in 2020. I had this like splash cold water on your face awakening. Like, oh my gosh, if you go against what they say, and I wasn't even an anarchist, in my opinion, they'll threaten your kids. They'll threaten your livelihood. They'll try to ruin you. Ultimately, they did, not in the sense that the government did, but cancel culture. Because the news And the narrative was just so against me. Oh, she's just a wealthy business owner that wants to make money. She doesn't care about people's lives. George Floyd riots came, and they publicly threatened to burn down my salon because of where I stood. I stood outside with guns and protected my salon with 400 patriots armed. Got called a white supremacist and a white nationalist and all the things. I mean, it like snowballed. It just snowballed. It went from like, I have a right to work, to being like the ultimate canceled conservative political figure within a 2-week time period. So we ended up, my family ended up closing our businesses, selling some of the tanning salons, closing, moving to Arizona for safety. And I was born into this new calling, no longer a hairstylist. And
wow. And I'm going to back up just a little bit. It's insane to me that what does your children have to do with the fact that you're at the salon working and earning money and running a business? It was just a blatant attack, and of any which way they could possibly come to attack you. And this is a free country. So it's incredible to me that it's not okay for you to open your salon and do someone's hair, but it's okay for someone to say they want to burn your business down. It's just the hypocrisy of all of this is really, really is what is astonishing to me. And it's hard because as a faith-based, spirit-filled Christian myself, you want to lose it.
I know.
We're human and we want to lose it because you're a very confident person. There's are women that are not as confident and they would back down. But I'm telling you, if you don't stand up for your right to work and your right to earn money and protect your children, who's going to do it? Because as a mom and as a faith-filled Christian, that's what we do. We protect our kids. No one loves our kids like we do, even though, the government says they're their children. They're nowhere close to being their children. They're not even in the same wheelhouse. These are God's children, and they've entrusted us. God has entrusted us as moms to raise these children in his word. So it's crazy. So you moved to Arizona. And at what point did they decide that they were going to attack you in Arizona?
Pretty quickly. And it wasn't necessarily Arizonans. It was a reporter in Oregon who tracked me. She was like borderline stalking me because we kept it very, very low key that we were moving to Arizona. Very low key. Antifa was posting my pictures. BLM was posting my pictures. I was put on a roster of like all the white supremacist businesses in Oregon. It was a little bit terrifying at the time. And so we kept it very secret that we were moving. Somehow this reporter found out, and she teamed up with a reporter in Arizona, and they immediately started digging into my background and my financials and like all the public records they could to try to create this slander piece that essentially makes no sense if you know any kind of basic math at all. They alleged in their article that I took all the Give, Send, Go money, or the GoFundMe money, and went and bought a bunch of properties in Arizona and like invested. And I was like, you think that like $70,000 buys a bunch of properties? And first of all, I'm paying an attorney, and you didn't even do the math that like I just sold my home in Oregon for $700,000. So like,
what point
they asked for my comment on email, and I was like, no.
At what point do you just pump the brakes and go, hold on, let's address the slander really quick? In order to, you can't just go and blab false narrative about someone and make it to fit your world, is what basically she did, and teamed up with this other, they call themselves reporters. They're not reporters.
No.
I don't know what you call them. They're definitely not journalists, but they're people that just kind of dig. And then when they can't find anything that fits the narrative that they're trying to push onto the American public, they just create their own. We'll just make it up because this is how we want it to sound. At what point, as an American, can I not stand up and say, wait a minute, you can't slander me? That's actually illegal.
Yeah. There's so many good things that come out of this too. One, that I was canceled so severely in Oregon that I could see right through their tactics. And I was kind of like, ugh. Give me a break. As soon as the article came out, a normal person that hadn't been through what I've been through would go, oh my gosh, I have anxiety. Everyone's going to read this and think I'm a thief and a liar and a grifter and all these things that are in the article. Right. And I kind of sat back and went, whatever, conservatives are going to see right through this. This article is all about how magically I happen to be the girl that stood up to lockdowns, and I'm a thief and a grifter and a MAGA far right extremist and all these things. And it's just like, conservatives are going to know that none of this is true. It looks like such a blatant attack, and leftists hate me anyway. So I didn't gain any new haters. I just sat back. I was at that point in my life, finally, where, when we got canceled and death threats in Oregon, I truly, truly had to give my life back to the Lord. I had to say, all right, Father, like, I've lost everything that I thought was my life. It's gone. Right. You have, he had wiped the slate clean. I trust you. I trust that this is all for a purpose. I trust that you did not literally just take everything from me so that you could punish me. I believe in whatever it is you're doing. And I vow to follow and to trust and to step out in faith. Whatever it is, I'm here for it. Then that news article comes out and I went, nope, this is it. This is my life now. Like, I know that I'm speaking truth. I know that what I did was right. I know who I am in Jesus. I know my identity. And these people they won't break me. And I know that whatever this article says, you're going to use it for good. And sure enough, they did. People were reaching out to me saying, we saw this article. It's so clear that you're being harassed and attacked all the way in Arizona. Right. And again, like, God turned it to good. It did no damage to me, did no damage to my reputation. It didn't cause me any pain or anxiety. On the flip side, it just continued to embolden me. Like, wow, this is how hard they will work to continue to slander me when I've moved into another state. And the point being, I moved into another state to protect my family. And then you follow me to Arizona to stalk me and slander me. It just shows what a horrible person you are and what a victim, technically, I am.
Maybe you should have moved to Florida when you packed your bags.
We're still toying with that idea.
It's nice. We really like it here in Florida.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times in the last 6 months, and I'm like, I could live here. It's pretty nice. Arizona keeps going the way it's going. You never know.
I know. I've been kind of trying to keep up with a little bit of the updates on Arizona. So all of this really was kind of turned into your good, and it just really became a completely different business. More than a business, it became your purpose and your passion. And so we know that that's what happens. What the enemy means for evil, God turns into good. And what a shift to go from what they were trying to do to you to what you have become now. You're truly a spokesperson for not just conservative women, but all conservatives. So I applaud you for what you're doing, because I know you probably still get harassed by all the crazies and all of that stuff. So, I know it's tough, but you're a confident woman, and I know you're going to continue to do what you need to do. So that being said, tell me a little bit about you. You've wrote a book since then. You stood up in front of the school board in a cat suit. Tell me how all that happened.
Yeah. So since moving to Arizona, you're right. I just feel like God did rewrite my story, and I have a different purpose. And it never, ever occurred to me to write a book. But through a series of 4 different people in a 24-hour period, God told me to write a book. I thought it was so interesting because I've never written a book. Have always liked to write since, middle school. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write about like the 14 days that I defied the government and what I lost. It's going to be a pretty small book. But I was obedient, and I said, all right. And the Lord speaks, I listen. So I sat down at my laptop and I started typing, and I just thought, I'll just start writing the story from my mouth until I feel like I've said what I need to say. Right. And it was really glorious because I went through an identity crisis when I moved to Arizona. I was no longer a, triple 6-figure salon owner, a boss babe. I had lost all my businesses. I was trying to do hair again and I didn't really feel like that was what I was supposed to be doing. Tried to do real estate, didn't feel right. And I went, oh my gosh, who am I now? What do I do with myself? I'm the Patriot Barbie. What is the Patriot Barbie? Right. When God called me to write a book, the selfish, narcissistic, natural, sinful human was like, ooh, I'm going to write a book. It's going to be a bestseller. I'm going to be like a world renowned author. That's what I'm going to be. Well, no, what really happened was this was his way of getting me to sit down and tell my story to myself and work through what he truly did. And what he did was use all of my life story, all of my colorful decisions in my 20s that I always wondered, why did I go through that? Why did God let me go through that? And I look now at, and as I'm writing the book, I think I only had maybe 30,000 followers, maybe. Right. I remember thinking, oh, he gave me a platform and I'm going to use these stories to glorify him. And so my whole life has been built up to this strange moment where all I did was decide I'm going to open my salon, and everything changed. And now everything I did in my life has become a ministry, a testimony. And so as I'm writing the book, I'm trying to avoid some of these really difficult stories in my 20s, God is just telling me, well, no, because you're not brave by yourself. You didn't open your salon bravely because you're brave. I created you to be brave. And here's how, because of this and because of this
Right.
and because of this. So I had to sit there and I just felt myself typing these stories that are just embarrassing and shameful and putting them in a book to print. And I'm like, okay, Lord, I guess I trust you. And so my book ended up being me finding out that I really believe he's called me into purpose, and also writing my story, my testimony. And I wouldn't want to sell a book that's like, oh, this is how I defied the government for 14 days. I want to write a book that glorifies God.
Right.
And this book it proves that God, in my opinion, it proves that God is real. Some of the things that he pulled me out from, a person can't do on their own. There is no story of redemption without him. And so it's my testimony, and it's empowering. And I get messages from women who read it and they cry throughout the whole book, and they bawl and they say, no one has ever put these things in print the way you have, and so authentically and so vulnerable. And it's changed my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who would have thought that just defying the government would turn into a book that would really, truly empower and change women's lives? So it's
and that's what it's all about, right? Because even though we walk on this journey, we have to actually rely on God. And I completely understand, Lindsay, because I've been there myself, way back 16 years ago when my 17-year-old passed away in a car accident. And I just started journaling. And then it turned into a book in 2014. I still kind of got off my path a little bit because just like you, I was like, well, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? And I wrote this book, but then I started finding myself, because you're kind of lost in your identity, right? And I was lost because I wasn't the same person anymore. It was completely different. And so you go on all these different routes of what do I do? What do I do? And then you have all these opportunities that come your way, but it doesn't align. When it doesn't align with what God intends for you to do, it either goes south really quick, or you don't feel at a peace about doing it, and it goes south really quick. So I truly believe that when you're walking in alignment in God's word and what he has for your life, those doors open, those opportunities open. And that's what happened for me. And obviously that's what happened for you. So I know you go to different events and you speak on behalf of the conservatives that we have in this country, which obviously are a lot, millions, probably more than actually came out and voted, right? What are you fighting for right now?
About the children's innocence. I mean, everything from the pornography in school books to the gender reassignment, to the gender identity, to the assaults that we're seeing in schools by trans people, to messing with their hormones, to just people that are keeping the little ones from Jesus. I mean, the next generation is our children, and this generation is pretty screwed up, in my opinion. So imagine what we're doing to them. And I have 3 kids, and I'm raising them godly. I'm raising them in a Christian home. I'm raising them to be morally just and sound and biblical. And I fear that they will be completely outcasted in their lifetime because people won't understand the Jesus that we know, because that Jesus is starting to get kind of watered down. And so is faith, and so is biblical truth. And that they are going to be sort of like I felt when I opened the salon, like alone in their convictions and in their truths. And that's okay. That's modern day persecution. And I'm teaching them about that too, which is where they're going to need to understand. But I don't want them to be alone in this. I don't want these children that are growing up in homes where they're being told they're the wrong gender. I don't want that for kids. It's heartbreaking. And obviously the pro-life movement, they're not growing up in these evil homes where they're being told they're the wrong gender because they're not even being born. They're being murdered in their womb. That to me is like the biggest fight. I tell people all the time, I can protect myself. My husband and I can protect ourselves, but no one is protecting these children. And whether they're my children or not, they are God's children. And so the fight is first and foremost for them.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, because not everyone that is given the opportunity to be a parent is actually a good one. And I'm not going to sit here and speak ill of any parent or how they raise their kids, but I know when I see something that is just utterly wrong, it's biblically wrong, it makes me cringe, it makes me sad, it makes me mad, it makes me all those things. I saw a video the other day where a mother actually told her son, who she's allowed to, grow their hair out and pretend like he's a girl, that his male body parts were a birth defect.
Yeah.
And
I just shared that one.
I just couldn't believe it. At first I thought it was like a staged video, that it could not be real. And I thought, why are they using this child, in this staged video, because there's no way it could be real. Like what mom would tell her son that, he's body parts or a birth defect and he's really a girl. I mean, how influential do you think you are over your children? Well, 100% you are. And so it's amazing to me that any parent would purposely hurt their child in a way to confuse them in such a matter that we have seen over and over and over. So good for you for standing up for the kids. I suspect that your next book will be a children's book that will talk just to that. Did I just give you an idea?
No, you just like prophesied.
All right. So I confirmed it, right?
I haven't told anyone this. My children's book is being illustrated right now. I have no idea how long until it launches, but it's being illustrated. And no one knows. No one knows.
Well, I knew it in my heart. The first thing that came to my heart was a children's book for you. So I don't know what that means, but it just, it popped right on me. So, I'm trying to be obedient when God gives me a word. And that's my word for you was your next book is a children's book. So good for you. We're looking forward to that. And I was telling you before we started, I have to give a shout out to Dr. Shannon Kroner because I interviewed her and that aired last Friday. I encourage you and all my listeners again to get that book. I'm unvaccinated and that's okay. Only because in the back of the book, she has a whole glossary on what words mean. And I thought it was so good because it's great for the parents. I was reading some of these words and being in as a medical professional, I knew what they were, but somebody that wasn't may not know what some of these terms are. So I thought that was really good. So I encourage everyone to get that book. And then let's keep an eye out for Lindsay's book that's coming too. So I guess we just kind of spoiled that, right?
Yay. So exciting.
That's okay.
I just filled out my 3-year-old's vaccine exemption form today. The religious exemption. Hey, we don't have his vaccine on record. Of course you don't, because he's not getting them.
He's not getting it. Well, that's the reason why I think Dr. Kroner is so adamant about vaccines. Hers goes way back. Her education and her expertise goes way back before COVID vaccines is because California doesn't allow any exemptions for children. Oh, so the only way that you can be exempt in California is to actually be actively getting chemo and have cancer, and your doctor has to write that. Other than that, no children are exempt. You just can't be part of school, and you're basically ostracized from everything: parties, school, events, everything. So it's horrible. Really, it's just amazing to me, and I hope and pray that with our next leadership in our country, that a lot of these things are going to change. They'll be federally mandated that you cannot, really ostracize somebody out because of their political. I mean, right now you can't because of gender or race or religion, but at what point are we going to add, political affiliation? Because that needs to be added, because that's what happens because we don't, and we're not set someone apart because of race or gender or religious beliefs, although a lot of people do set us apart for religious beliefs. Political affiliation is not in there and it needs to be added. So I want you to tell everybody, though, Lindsay, where are you going to be? And tell us a little bit about moving forward. Where can we see you?
I'm doing a lot of public speaking, a lot of keynote speaking, which is just, again, one of God's great gifts to me. I did not realize how much I loved public speaking and telling my story and empowering people with it. So I'll be all over the place: Washington, California, Texas in the next few months. And then I don't have my next year's schedule yet, but you can find everything I'm doing on patriotbarbie.com. And then the only social media that I'm extremely active on is Instagram, which is the.patriot.barbie. I get censored often, so I try to just focus on one platform. So that's it. But patriotbarbie.com is where you can find everything. Book me to speak, shop at my apparel store. I'm sure you saw, I have a conservative women's fashion brand that just came out. My shorts are from there.
Nice.
Pretty Little Patriot. And all of those links are on my Instagram. So
I have your t-shirt, God's Promise.
Oh,
I have that. And the sticker that you sent me in the t-shirt is on my computer.
Yay. That was a hit. That to me was so inspiring to see. If you put out a shirt with a rainbow on it, says God's Promise, this many people are willing to wear it out in public proudly. And I wear that one all the time. So,
oh yeah,
that's amazing.
Oh yeah. I wear it through the airports everywhere. I should have wore it today and represented. I apologize for that.
Yeah, but you look so pretty. You're like pink and blush and your background is all matchy.
I'm all matchy in here, but no, I do. I wear that t-shirt. I'm going to have to get another one because I wear it so much and I've washed it so much it's faded.
Okay. Well, I have plenty more. I ordered a lot of those.
I'll have to get another one of those. I love it. Yes. I appreciate it. Well, I want to thank you, Lindsay. I really appreciate you coming on today and just really speaking out and telling everyone. I mean, anyone that's followed you knows your story. And I do want to get your book. I want to get your book and read that because it sounds like you've been through some hardships in your life and where you've overcome. And that's really big on this podcast. You know, on Real Girl Talk, we want to talk about how you can be successful and you can overcome, and especially when you're X'd out by society for whatever reason. So I appreciate that. We'll have to have you back next year as it gets closer to the election. I know you'll probably have a lot to share and things that are going on. So we'll have you back in next quarter, Q1 of 2024. But right. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You'll have plenty more questions after you read my book. Trust me.
Oh, I don't doubt it. So I'll go ahead and start marking through those and doing highlights so then we can go back over them.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.